Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade. Well guys, in this one is a big one because it's my guide for Retribution Paladins or Mythic Plus dungeons for this last patch of the expansion. So in here you'll find all the information you need to push your keys up to 15 or even higher depending on what you want to do. There's also a small disclaimer here that this guide considers that you already have 4-piece tier. Since the catalyst is open, you can now create your own tier pieces there. So it's a lot easier to get tier now than it was before. So all the information in this guide will be only applicable if you have 4-piece tier. Another small disclaimer, this is not a raid guide. Raid runs on different rules that Mythic Plus do. Mythic Plus has the encrypted affix and different other small bonuses, and also is a different environment of raiding. So this is only applicable to Mythic Plus. Also, I have divided the different parts of the video down so you can just jump into the part you're most interested in. Having said that guys, now let's start with the video. Okay guys, let's talk about talents. So most of the Retribution Paladin talents are already set in stone because they synergize really well with our tier set bonus. Basically all of the damage talents are already always going to be that. There's no changes. But I'm going to be talking of each row individually just to explain why they are set in stone. So let's go to the role level 15 first. This is Zeal. Zeal is the only option here because it just gives us more auto attacks and our tier set bonus works out of auto attacks. The more auto attacks we get, the more Art of War procs we can get, and that's more Seraphics. The next role is also basically the same. Blade of Wrath increases the proc chance of Art of War basically by doubling, so it's a no-brainer to pick with our tier set currently. That's the only option we have here. The next rows are utility rows, which make them really nice because we have options. So on the row level 30, we have Fist of Justice, Repentance, and Blinding Light. The 3 options are actually valid depending on what your group needs. So I normally just recommend going Fist of Justice because I really like to have my stun more often. You know, there's some mobs that can't be interrupted but can be stunned. So it's really useful to have your stun ready all the time. Repentance is nice if your group doesn't have CC, although most groups will already have someone that does CCs better than Red Paladin. So if your group doesn't have it, use Repentance. It's pretty decent. The next one is Blinding Light. Blinding Light is really powerful if your group is pulling a lot of mobs and there's a lot of casters. So it's like a mini interrupt on those casters, so you avoid taking damage for a few extra seconds. You know, that may save someone's life, it may help you heal up or use a defensive. On the next row, the row level 35, this is our defensive and mobility row. There's only 2 options here that you can use. This is Unbreakable Spirit and Cavalier. Eye for an Eye doesn't really have uses at the moment. There's not physical damage that's going to be out most of the time on Mythic Plus dungeons that you have to mitigate. So let's focus on the 2 options that we will be using. So Cavalier is really powerful because it gives you 2 horse charges. Horse charges now last for 6 seconds, I think, with our current Conduits, which is pretty damn long, so it can help a lot with mobility issues of Red Paladins. The next option, and the one that I recommend, is Unbreakable Spirit. This just gives you cooldown reduction on Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, and Lay on Hands. And this is really powerful because we are really squishy. Red Paladins are one of the squishiest classes in Mythic Plus dungeons. Even though we have our complete immunity with Bubble, it has a long cooldown, so this makes it 3.5 minute cooldown. And this also stacks with the relic, so if you take and you're using Bubble often, this will give you more uses out of that Bubble that may save your life, or you can even use it offensively and just ignore mechanics and just do damage while you have those seconds of immunity, you know? So I really recommend using this talent. The next row, we have only 1 option. Divine Purpose has surpassed Seraphim, although by not much. I think it's only 1.5% or something like that. But Divine Purpose is now the best talent on this row. It's also a really fun talent. It makes the playstyle of just proccing stuff really active, you know? There's always something to do as a Red Paladin. Either you have a Wake of Ashes proc, a Blade of Justice proc, or a Divine Purpose proc. It's a really fun playstyle, so Divine Purpose is the best one on this row. The next one, the row level 45, we have 2 options. The first one is Selfless Healer and the second one is Healing Hands. So in the past I normally recommended going Selfless Healer for all occasions, even high keys. But Healing Hands has actually really good power to save your life in really high keys, because the healing from Healing Hands is really strong. Basically, a Word of Glory will, if you're at 20% health, will take you to about 80% health. So it's basically like almost a Lay on Hands. It also has the benefit of reducing the cooldown of your Lay on Hands by 60%, depending on how much health you're missing. This will stack with Unbreakable Spirit. So basically, your Lay on Hands is not like a 2-minute timer if you use it on someone that's pretty low, which is really powerful. But the Word of Glory increased healing is the thing that's really strong here. I would recommend everyone using this talent if you're doing keys over the level 20, because there's a lot of damage that will chunk you down. And this also synergizes really well with that conduit that we use that's called Shielding Words. We will talk about that when we get to the conduits part. But Selfless Healer is also really efficient because it doesn't use Holy Power, so it doesn't cost you DPS. You can use it every 4 times you use Holy Power Spenders. It's a free Flash of Light, which is pretty decent, and it will help you stabilize if you're doing like content between anything between 10 and 18 will be useful to use Selfless Healer. So now let's go to the last row, and here we also don't have any options. Sanctified Wrath is just our talent of choice because it synergizes better with the amount of procs we get. We got Wake of Ashes proc that gives us 3 Holy Power for free. You can use if you use it when we have Sanctified Wrath, you get more Holy Power Spenders in that window. So it's just a no-brainer. The synergy between Sanctified Wrath, our tier set bonuses, and our talent choices is just too powerful to even consider using Crusade or Final Reckoning in Mythic Plus dungeons. It also has the benefit of being uncapped AoE, so any damage of Sanctified Wrath is uncapped. Well, it is capped at 20 targets, but that's basically uncapped AoE, you know, and that's a really good source of more uncapped AoE damage that Red Paladins have. So now let's go to the next part of the guide, which is Conduits, guys. Okay guys, let's talk about Conduits. So Conduits are a tricky thing because you use certain Conduits for Fortified weeks and you use certain Conduits for Tyrannical weeks. But first, which is our best soulbind? And the answer is Mechanicus. Mechanicus is just our best soulbind because he synergizes the best with our current talent and tier set setup. He's ahead of Pelagos by about 5% and ahead of Clea by about 8%. So he's really strong. I normally don't care about 1% differences, but when the thing is about 5 to 8%, the difference is noticeable. So what conduits are we going to use for Fortified weeks? For Fortified weeks, the first one we're going to be taking is Truth's Wake. This is because Wake of Ashes resets a lot with our tier set bonus, and we get more of these procs and dots over the fortified enemies, which is really strong in AoE situations. The next conduit that we're going to be taking in a fortified setting is Bringing Clarity. Bringing Clarity is just really strong for any Kyrian Paladin, and we'll always take this even if on Tyrannical weeks. The next conduit we'll be taking is Hammer of Genesis. We take this instead of one extra potency conduit because Hammer of Genesis has a lot of value, especially in Fortified weeks, because there's a lot of trash, and trash is the important thing that has to die. So having a mini lost on every pull is really powerful. This haste is also not additive, it's multiplicative, so it doesn't add the actual haste it says. So normally 5 targets would give you 15% haste. It actually scales with your haste. So I have currently 24%, and when I have 5 stacks of Hammer of Genesis, this thing gives me 20% haste, which is extremely powerful. It's even stronger than, for example, a drums, you know. So this thing is a really good tool to have whenever we're doing fortified keys. Now let's go to what we take for Tyrannical. Okay guys, so for fortified keys we have some small adjustments that we have to do to our conduits. The first one we're going to swap out is Truth's Wake conduit, the Wake of Ashes one, and instead of that we're going to be using Virtuous Command, because Virtuous Command is basically one of the best single target conduits we have. It basically gives a flat percentage holy damage increase on everything that we do in single target. It also has a really high uptime because it procs off our Normal Judgment, Divine Toll, and Divine Resonance judgments, so it's a really powerful choice. The next conduit we're going to swap out is Hammer of Genesis. So instead of Hammer of Genesis, we're going to be using Templar's Vindication. This is only if we want to like super focus on boss killing. If we want to go something middle ground that also works on bosses and works on trash, we can go Expurgation. So Temperance Vindication is our full boss mode, and Expurgation can be like a middle ground. And the last conduit that we'll be using in Tyrannical Keys is Ringing Clarity. So Ringing Clarity, as I said before, is just good for both single target and Tyrannical Keys and Fortified Keys. There is a small case to be made of using Hammer of Genesis even on Tyrannical Keys, since the boss spawns always 3 relics in the boss itself. There's 4 units, so you will get 4 stacks. And then whenever you kill the relics and the new unit appears, that will count as a new enemy. So then you will get your 5th stack, and you will extend the duration of your buff a few, like 10 extra seconds. So you can get 20 seconds of extra haste when using Hammer of Genesis. That's kind of a niche situation. I wouldn't recommend just running Hammer of Genesis on Tyrannical Keys. I would just prefer to secure my single target and run either Temperance Vindication or Expurgation. But the choice is there if you also want to like do some like padding on Tyrannical Keys and do a lot of AoE damage with Hammer of Genesis. And well guys, that's the choices that you can make on offensive conduits. Now let's go to defensive and finesse conduits. Okay, so for finesse and defensive conduits, guys, there's only one finesse conduit that we actually use all the time, and this is the one that increases our horse duration. It basically doubles it. This is more important if you are using the double horse talent, because you will have 2 horses, each one lasting 6 seconds. That's a ton of mobility. Other finesse conduits that are kind of niche is basically Echoing Blessings. Echoing Blessings is not as useful as the horse one. It gives you a small 10% DR whenever you use Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Sacrifice on someone. And also it gives you 10% movement speed when you use Blessing of Freedom on someone. It's not the most useful conduit, but it has some niche applications. Maybe your tank is doing a huge pull and he needs that extra 10% damage reduction from Blessing of Sacrifice. That may be a case to use this. Okay, now let's go to defensive conduits. Well, endurance. So the first one I want to talk about is Shield and Wards. So Shield and Wards is really strong if you use it with the talent Healing Hands. Because with the Healing Hands talent, if you crit when you are low health, let's say you crit for 40k health and heal all that, you will also get on top a 12k shield, which is extremely strong, because if you were already dying, that shield can actually have a lot of value, because if you were dying, the damage is probably still going. So having that shield on top of the heal is really nice as a safety net to save your life, you know. Okay, so if you're not using the talent Healing Hands, you can actually swap Shielding Wards with Divine Call. Divine Call is a really passive conduit, because it only reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield by 5 seconds whenever you take damage. This can only occur every 24 seconds. This is pretty niche also, because it may give you like 1 or 2 extra bubbles over the duration of a key, which can actually save you, you know. Maybe you needed that bubble at that certain time, and this will maybe give you that extra push to get that immunity and save yourself, or do extra damage if you're using it offensively. Now let's go to the next defensive one, Condensed Anime Spear. It's just a passive heal of 5% of your health every 10 seconds. Pretty decent healing. It helps you like keep yourself top off without intervention of your healer. And the last defensive endurance conduit that I recommend using is Golden Path, because it's just another passive heal. Whenever you throw your consecration, you just get a small zone where you take healing, and it's pretty decent. If you're standing the whole consecration, it's about 9,000 healing or something like that. So it adds up if you're like throwing consecrations a lot. So guys, those are all the conduits that you will be using on keys. And now let's go to the next part of the video. Okay guys, let's talk about legendaries now. So for fortified settings, there is only one legendary that you will ever use, and this is the Tempest of the Lightbringer. This legendary is just too strong. It increases the damage of our Divine Storm by 20%, and that 20% extra damage is uncapped AoE, so it's really useful in big pulls. The other legendaries don't really come close to the efficiency of Tempest, so that's the only one that you will need for fortified. Now let's go to Tyrannical, and here we do have a lot of choices. Okay guys, so for Tyrannical situations, this is a really tricky one, because in Tyrannical keys you do want to kill the boss fast, because it's Tyrannical, it's gonna kill you if not. And you also have to deal with trash, and trash has to die fast, because there's some effects that come with Tyrannical weeks that make trash really annoying. So you need a legendary that's both single target good and AoE good. It's not like the case in Fortified that bosses just fall over and you only have to focus most of the time in trash. So if we would go with only a single target legendary, Final Verdict would always win. As you can see here in these simulations, Final Verdict is the best legendary hands down. It gives you 7.3% extra damage. The other ones get you 3.8, 3.8, 3.87, 3.3 damage. So, but we have to take out Final Verdict out of the equation because it doesn't do anything in AoE situations. So we're left with 4 legendaries that we can choose from. That is Vanguard's Momentum, that is Dusk and Dawn, Mad Paragon, and Magistrate's Judgment. So those 4 legendaries are also so close together in damage. As you can see, the top one is 3.8% and the lower one is 3.3%. Those differences are meaningless. Like I said before, the damage difference that are less than 1% don't actually matter. For me, though, these 4 legendaries are basically the same. Now let's go to another setting, another simulation. So in this simulation, you can see this is Dungeon Slice. So many people say Dungeon Slice is not a really good way to simulate your character. But I beg to differ because I think it's the only way that we can model fighting a boss and then fighting trash effectively, you know? And it's just a good way to have like a small benchmark of what you're looking for. It's not perfect, I agree with that, but it gives you an idea of what you're looking for. So here I'm simulating. The first one is Mad Paragon. The second row, you can't actually see the legendary, but that's Magistrate's Judgment. The next one is Vanguard's Momentum, and the next one is of Dusk and Dawn. And the last one doesn't count because it's just a bracer change. So as you can see, the percentage damages in a Dungeon Slice setting are basically null. These two are the two lower ones are basically the same, and the best one is 0.2% extra damage better, you know. So those differences are meaningless. Now let's go back to WoW here. So as you can see, these 4 legendaries that you have on your screen are basically the same in damage. It comes down for tyrannical keys, personal preference. Which legendary you want to use the most? Which type of playstyle do you prefer? Do you want to use Magistrate Judgments and spam judgments and get like less cost Holy Power spenders? You want to use Vanguard's Momentum and keep that buff up, throwing hammers at that? Do you want to go all in on wings with Mad Paragon? Or do you want to go with a more passive playstyle of build 5 Holy Power and get that small 6% damage from Dusk and Dawn? It really depends up to you and tyrannical keys. Now guys, let's go to the next part of the video. Okay guys, in this part we're going to be talking about stats. So stats are something really touchy, especially when someone asks in the Paladin Discord. They normally say sim your character, you know. But sometimes that answer I feel is too cold. You know, people want answers that are a bit more like numeric. They want to see a number that they can look for and try to find. While I know that the simulation way is the best one for each individual character, I want to give you guys a more defined idea of what stats you're actually looking for Mythic Plus and Mythic Plus setting. This is because this is my own experience. These stats have worked for me almost all the expansion. So the best stat priority in my opinion is the following. Strength first, that means item level will always win 99% of the cases. After that, mastery. After that, haste. After that, burst and crit are tied together. Now let's talk about percentages. How much mastery do you really want on your character? So I have an add-on that's called True Stat Values. It's really helpful to show you when a stat is going to go into diminishing returns. So for mastery, you want to get your character as close to 60% mastery as possible, because after that, mastery is going to be diminishing in stats. For haste, I recommend having a value between 21 and 25% haste as something like really, it will feel very well because the rotation will be smooth. After that, critical strike and versatility, basically you can use whatever stat budget you have left. I like to have critical strike between 14 and 16%. And versatility is whatever I have a versatility at that point, you know? It's kind of like the throwaway stat. If you can gem for versatility after you have about 14% critical strike, it's a good idea as well because it's a very nice stat to have. It's just basically free percentage damage. So those are stat guys. Now let's go to the next part of the video. Okay guys, now let's talk about trinkets. So I already made a guide for best trinkets for Retribution Paladins. It's one of the videos on my channel. You can look at that if you want a deeper explanation of all the trinkets that we can use. But for this guide, I'm just going to mention the best option that you can use for Mythic Plus dungeons on unused trinkets and passives. So for unused, the best one without a doubt is the Overwhelming Power Crystal. This trinket has really good synergy with our wings because you will have it up for each and every one of them, especially if you bind it in a macro for it. It also doesn't waste any value if you're using relics in your dungeon routes, because the relic will reduce the wings cooldown by 30 seconds, so it makes it a 1.5 minute cooldown, which matches perfectly with these trinkets. Okay, so for our passive trinket option, there is one really big outlier here, and this is the Old Warrior Soul. This trinket is basically best if you have it on a mythic item level from the last tier, and if you have it on a heroic item level, this will do well until you get a mythic item level trinket of the next ones that I'm going to mention. So if you don't have Old Warrior Soul or want to replace your heroic one, these are your options. I have two really good options and one that you can get if you can't actually get these other two. So the first one is the Elegy of the First Ones. This trinket is really strong because it's a nice stat stick that comes from the 5th boss of the raid. It gives you your top stat and also gives anyone in your group that's the same covenant as you a small amount of that stat. The next one comes from dungeons. This is the Solia Secret Technique. This one comes from the dungeon, the Gambit dungeon in Tasabesh. This trinket is really powerful as a stat stick as well. The only downside is that you need someone in your group that has the stat that you want. For example, for Red Paladins, it would be Mastery. And sometimes there isn't someone that has Mastery, so that's the downside of this trinket. You have to conform with whatever stat you can get. And for those that can't actually get any of these two options, there's one more that I'm putting here, and this is the Insignia from PvP. This one is the easiest to get because the only thing you have to do is go in. You can do random battlegrounds, 3v3s. You can even do just normal BGs and get the base version of this trinket, and that will last you for a bit until you can get better equipment, you know. So this trinket doesn't have strength as its main stat. It has haste, and also, but it has a really consistent strength proc. It has an approximately 45% uptime on that proc, which is pretty nice. So those are our options as passive trinkets, guys. Now let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay guys, now this is one of the last parts of the video, and I'm going to show you guys the rotation for Retribution Paladins. First I'm going to show you the AoE rotation and then the single target rotation. Note that the Retribution Paladin rotation is pretty simple. Anyone can do it, especially now that we only have to react to procs, which is the most like skill heavy part of doing a Retribution Paladin. Whenever you get a certain proc, you want to put your most valuable spells in there. That is, in order of importance, Divine Toll, Wake of Ashes, and any other spender that you have. So that's the spenders that you want to put inside the Seraphim windows. Now I'm going to show you guys. Okay guys, so first of all, you want to always build up to 5 Holy Power. Then you use Wings and start spending immediately. Use Wake of Ashes because you have a Seraphim proc, keep building and spending. Now here's the important part. You don't want to use your Divine Toll immediately, because you still have some time in your trinket, you know, it lasts for 15 seconds. You want to fish for a Seraphim proc, so you can put the trinket, the Divine Toll, within that Seraphim window. Then you continue spending and building as normal. That's the most important part of just doing a big AoE burst, trying to put your most important spells in the Seraphim window. Okay guys, the single target Retribution Paladin rotation is also really easy. Just build 5 Holy Power, use Wings, immediately spend. Then you use Wake of Ashes, after that fish for procs for your Divine Toll to put in of Seraphim, then keep building and spending as normal. There's differences depending on the legendary that you use. For example, for Vanguard's Momentum and Mad Paragon, you only give priority to Hammer of Wrath more. For Dusk and Dawn, sometimes you don't spend, you just build 5 Holy Power whenever the debuff is going to go off, and then you continue spending. And for Magistrate's Judgment, basically it's the same rotation, but sometimes you have 3 Holy Power spenders that cost 2 Holy Power. And that's pretty much it for rotation on Retribution Paladins, guys. It's pretty simple. A pretty simple class to play. Just react to the procs accordingly and don't waste Holy Power. And well guys, that's the end of the video. I hope it was useful for you guys and you enjoyed it. And if you did like it, like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for watching.